Now I would like to request Dr. Arun R. Joshi, Director ASAD Bhopal, who will address rural livelihood challenges and prospects.
Good afternoon, August House. Good afternoon, the dais, students. I'm not new to these students, I'm sure, at least to the semester 4 students. The topic here for the discussion is rural livelihoods, challenges and prospects. It itself is a new stream of inquiry and knowledge, and it's very difficult for me to really put things on a PowerPoint and show some empirical data. But what I would like to do this afternoon, whatever 5, 7, 10 minutes available to me, catching up with the time constraint you have, I would like to flag few issues before this house to maybe deliberate at some point of time. Being the learner in the rural livelihoods for last 2 decades, what I have seen and what I have realized, there are number of challenges upcoming, and we have been facing those challenges. I do have a small, comparatively very small list of prospects and some something to share with you, that where we can look at the silver lining, the brighter side of the picture. I'm not going to really define the rural livelihood, as there are many perspectives, but the perspective I developed as an development professional, a learner working with the rural people, and I identify myself as a landless farmer, and I'm trying to learn how a farmer thinks, a landless or a small farmer thinks. It's the quality of life to my mind actually that basically I understand is the rural livelihood. It's not just the competencies, capabilities, the capital, their vulnerabilities, or the strategies they use to really earn their livelihood, or in a very strict shorter vision, the economic activities they are engaged into. To my mind, it's the wholesome quality of life. So what I'm trying to do this afternoon, and taking cue from the previous speakers, and they have in fact shown, particularly Professor Karmarkar in his very strong presentation, gave a lot of statistics and analysis, and the presentations then on had number of information, numericals, data, all showing that where we are leading. Taking cue from that only, I just enumerate 4 or 5 challenges. I'll go into little details of those challenges, and then maybe a smaller list of prospects. To my mind, the first challenge is the rural-urban dynamics, the changing rural-urban dynamics. We have been talking a lot about that, and the demographic changes taking place in the rural areas, and the rate of urbanization surpassing the rate of population growth in past decade. It's 36% on a decadal basis for the urbanization, while it is 26 or 27% as a national aggregate average for the population growth, which means more number of people are coming to these towns and cities in the urban areas and trying to live more urban life actually, and there are underlying reasons. So that's one big challenge actually. How do we restrict that? Is it required? Do we have any right to really ask people to stay back in the villages? Should we ask them to do that? What right do we have? Those are the things. The other one, the other challenge, I'll go in more detail about this particular point. Maybe I'll just go through these 5-6 points, the challenges I have in my mind. The accelerated or the fast-paced ingress of market forces, and I don't say market itself, market is required and they are always everywhere. They're omnipotent, omnipresent, I say. But the market forces into the rural areas, and how do we deal with that actually is a big challenge. Particularly for the rural livelihood, they can be put to use on a brighter side in more favorable manner, or maybe the market forces become detrimental to the rural livelihoods possibly if you don't take care of those and address those, realign those. The third challenge I see is changing hopes and aspirations of the rural youth. It's a really an issue which needs a lot of discussion and deliberation, because a youth is a youth. In the age group of say 18 to 35, the number is maybe more in rural areas, maybe a little less in urban areas, but they are in the same age group. They are into the same technology age also, and the pace of modernization is also impacting the rural youth. So their hopes and aspirations are also changing, and we need to really understand that and then address the issue of rural livelihood. That's a big challenge to my mind. The fourth point I believe is what the earlier presentations also focused and shed some light on, is this ailing farm sector. It's really becoming a big challenge. As an agriculture professional, I believe that there is a increase in use of modern inputs, the external inputs, but in return the carry home cash to the farmer is diminishing, and diminishing at a faster rate. That's a big challenge actually. The productivities are also reducing. You have seen this slide earlier also. It's obvious, we all know and we all recognize that there is a very weak infrastructure in the rural areas, and that is a big challenge to my mind. I'll go into detail. And there is another issue which I believe, there are a number of challenges, but I have 5, 6 in my mind, and I thought I can share with this house, and the house can then maybe deliberate in some point of time and or throw more light on some of these issues. And the last one is this conflict between the public good and the private benefit. That always attracts my attention, that when we talk about the rural livelihood to my mind is a more personal, individual issue than the rural development. And then it is always, whether I should work with an individual to improve the livelihood, or really do a development work actually on a area basis. Because when I talk about the rural development, the area specific approach, whether it is watershed, whether it is community blocks, whether it is this, that, the participatory approach, we all fantasize, romanticize with all these new things, but we all, at the end, we always the individual who always wants the individual benefits. How do we deal with that? These are the 5, 6 issues which I believe this house has to really deliberate, discuss, and see where we are leading. I'll then go in little details of a few of these points. The first one I raised was this changing dynamics, the rural-urban dynamics. This changing rural-urban dynamics, I already said, this faster rate of urbanization, and it cannot be stopped. The new thinking, the new government also wants that, okay, let it be, it's 45, 55, it's not bad. Why can't we also have the global standards of this dynamics? And that's, I think, is as an agriculture professional, I always see and think that the real problem before the farm sector is not the resources, is not the technologies, is not the science and other things or research, but it is more to do with more hands into the rural sector. And they are underemployed, they are underpaid. There is no pay commission for them as well. So really making me think that, okay, if we take out people from the farm sector, we can address many issues, including the land holding consolidation, which is a major issue, because the Land Inheritance Act in our India always, accelerates the rate of fragmentation of holdings. If we want to stop, take out people, and then suddenly you will find people under force, certain force, will have to come together, consolidate their holding, and there you have what exactly you want to really change the scenario in the farm sector, addressing the rural livelihoods. disintegration of the village, everybody is talking, and this I am talking in the context of the faster rate of urbanization and the cities, the metros. I remember my college days when, as a NCT cadet attending a camp, national camp, I was placed in a place called Gurgaon, which was really a gaon, where the IFCO Chowk, the big IFCO Chowk today, there exactly was the location where my NCC camp was, and it was very difficult to get a samosa at that time, and we used to really run away from the camp and then getting the punishments. No roads, exactly. And if today you see at the Gurgaon, it's not a gaon anymore. So what is happening is basically the place where I live for last 5-7 years in Bhopal is just, my house is just a few yards from a canal. And now it is the entire area, the canal fed irrigated area is now colonies, big colonies, wonderful houses, and all occupied by the urban people. So what are we doing really? Is this we want, or how do we think about it? The third challenge in this rural urban dynamics is the orientation, urban orientation to the education. The entire education we are extending to the rural youth is hugely tilted towards the urban orientation. This urban orientation of the education is really changing their hopes and aspirations, and they are not now ready to go back to the villages. There is a thought coming up, what they call it as the attracting and retaining rural youth into agriculture, the ARIA concept, which everybody talks about, but there are no positive signs as yet that how do we attract and retain the youth into the farm sector. Otherwise, we cannot produce the food in factories. We have to go back to the fields, to the forest, to the ponds, or to the orchards to produce our food. And that's where I believe very strongly that institutions who are engaged into the education have to really think about it seriously. Even the new education policy should do something about the reorientation for rural orientation. The issue raised by Dr. Sabdi here is this bridge course for the medical practitioners, because the MBBS doctors, they don't want to go into work into the villages. The engineers, they don't want to go and work into villages. The better teachers, they don't want to go and work in the villages. It's all related to how do we build the mindsets of our youth actually to go back and work into the villages, and that's my point of view about this challenge. The rural areas are always seen as mere sourcing areas for the food. Why is that? Are they simply the sourcing areas? Are they really the partners into producing quality food for the urban people also? How do we see that actually? That's a big challenge, and that will change the whole mindset. Unless, and you can see there are a number of failures also. Reliance Fresh, I should not name, but then I am forced to do that. Subhiksha, are many. There may be some more reasons actually, deeper reasons, but what I understand, studying them as an agriculture professional into the marketing field, that they have always seen and treated the rural areas as sourcing areas merely. That's a folly actually, and that's a big challenge. If we change that situation, immediately we would be able to address the issue of rural livelihoods in a better. What about the environmental services? That's another issue actually. The fresh air, the clean water, and the good quality food is only ensured if there are villages and if there are youth working in those fields. And that is where the rural livelihoods. So I think the urban mindset has to change, and then there should be something called the environmental services. We need to really understand that. And then there is a huge array of jobs available for the environmental services, for the ensured quality environmental services for the urban people if there is a rural orientation. And then this land use change, I have already raised this point. Large corporates want easy reach to the bottom of the pyramid, and that's how the market forces came into play in the rural areas. But they merely see them as, simple purchasers. Somehow or the other, some certain thing produced on a massive scale without really looking into the quality. And I give a very crude example. A very famous automobile company, very popular for producing very high quality luxury SUVs for the urban areas, also produces an RTV. And if you look at the quality of the two vehicles from the same manufacturer, there's a huge difference. It's an issue of insensitivity. We need the technologies, we need the equipments, we need the machines with zero defect, which needs lesser repairs and maintenance in the rural areas. It is happening other way around. Why is that? Actually, that's a big challenge, and that attracts and that changes the mindsets of the rural people and the rural youth in particular. The raw material from the rural area seldom receives the right price. I did a lot of calculations, and I did the state agriculture plan and the comprehensive district agriculture planning exercise, and what I found, there is about 240 to 400% difference between the farm gate price and the price we paid the retail counters or the shop floors. And where this is going, a farmer while growing pigeon pea is taking a risk of 160, 170 or 200 days, putting in a lot of effort, money, and then getting only 30-35 rupees a kilo actually. And when we go and buy a half a kilo of branded arhar dal, we buy it for about 90 to 120, 130 rupees. So it's almost 200 to 300% difference where this money is going. The people in the chain are taking risk of very smaller, shorter duration, smaller risks, getting more. And a producer, primary producer, who is taking much larger risks of all type and not receiving. And that's where we need to really rethink about the whole rural-urban thing. The hopes and aspirations are already used. The rural youth is also having a very strong interface with the telecommunication technologies. They are now the mobile users. They are on the Facebook, they use all sorts of things. So why not their mindset and their hopes and aspiration be the same as of their urban counterparts? There is more focus with these medias on the infotainment alone, but less on the knowledge generation actually. That's really hurting us. The youth also wants income security. And when I say this, there are two issues to my mind always as a practitioner, that what they want is the disposable cash income at the end of the day or at the end of the month actually, that they can spend in the market for their quality of life. And the frequency of cash inflow into their family or into their pockets. As a farmer, if I am growing one crop, it is one time in 365 that I have a cash inflow. And that too is not enough, because farming is not that remunerative and it's underemployment. The best irrigated areas, assured irrigated area, only ensures 145 days of employment on farm per acre per hectare basis, and a dryland farmer hardly gets 85 days of employment. So what about the rest of the time? And that's where we have this employment guarantee scheme, which again gives only 100 days, and if there are 3 or 4 members, then it is further divided, so they remain unemployed most of the time actually, and that is where we have to really look into. Yeah, I'm just now with these things, I have few points to make, few quick comments to make about the prospects. We have a huge number, definitely, in the rural areas, the rural youth, who is looking forward for better quality of life. To my mind, that is what the rural livelihood, and that's what people call is a demographic dividend. It's not in the urban area, but it is equally important in the rural areas also. And for the country, it is all the more important that if we have more youth full in action on the farms, we have better quality food, fresh air, enough water into the cities also, and we would be more self-reliant in all these three things. Huge potential for realignment of farm sector, and that would only happen with some kind of consolidation of holdings or some changes. Technology, we have enough. Why we are not then able to produce? Why we are still at the bottom of the table when it comes to the productivity? With in all crops, milk, meat, fish, goat, poultry, you name anything, and we are at the bottom in terms of productivity. Because of the sheer size, we may be number one, number two in total production, but that does not translate into the high productivity. So how do we realign this? We have shown some ways, and I did the experiments, and I have very first-hand experience working with the small marginal farmers, these primary producers institutions, the organizations, and I very strongly believe that that's the way where we can realign the whole sector and revive the farm economy if we organize these small producers into vibrant, commercially viable institutions. Government is taken note of it. There are a number of good policies, programs. In fact, I remember the NABARD has also come up with a big program on that. Small Farmers Agribusiness Consortium, many civil society organization, everybody. That's where I see a big role. These farmers institutions, when restructured in a new framework with a new, more vibrant and friendly institutional ecosystem, if they survive, they would create upstream and downstream jobs actually and ensure the rural livelihoods. There is another issue always about the skill. There is sector skill councils in India, and I have been very closely watching this Agriculture Skill Council of India. Number of agriculture scientists are engaged in Agriculture Skill Council of India. They also go for the VTPs. They have follow the same national occupational standards on a global standard basis, and then national vocational and occupational framework actually. They have identified number of competency levels and the skill sets and the level of skills to be given. But unfortunately, the entire focus is still on the skilling in the non-farm sector. Why can't we have the farm sector skilling? When we will do that actually, and who will do that? We need good institutions. The last thing I would like to say is the de-skilling. Yeah, de-skilling. And this de-skilling is, you know, as advertisements for many products, it's all de-skilling. Every day a new mobile handset comes and nobody gives the training, and we all learn with only that 30-second program. So we need to really think about how do we de-skill some of these new technologies, what are the ways and means. We have enough experience, and if we see these prospects and if we really address those challenges, I am sure that we would be able to really crack this very hard nut of ensuring quality of life in the rural areas. That means addressing the rural livelihoods. It's all very sketchy talk, I know, because the topic is such is a very, a huge topic. It needs very in-depth deliberations. It's a comparatively new field of inquiry and knowledge creation also. But for this patient hearing and providing me time, I thank XIDAS management, the school's management, and this house also, including the dais, for providing me this opportunity. Thank you very much.